I didn't keep my promise to my son and gave away my sports car to my stepson. Things were said and now I will never see him again. Tifu by giving my old sports car to my stepson 16, instead of my actual son 20 who wanted it since he was a child. This happened last year, but yesterday I got a grim reminder. Before we start off with this train wreck of a story, here is some background information. I've been a car mechanic since the age of 19 and I have my own garage/store since I was 28 years old. After my first marriage went to shambles, I remarried a few years later. Just like my current wife, she had a son from her first marriage. My stepson was around 4 years old back then and he sees me as his real father, seeing his own father walk out on him. My son from my first marriage was living with his mom, but I saw him quite often at the shop on his way back from school. He dropped by occasionally to say hello or look at the cars I had in the shop. My wife and ex-wife actually got along well. There were never any issues with my son staying over or staying for dinner. He lived with his mom though. When I turned 17, my dad bought me a black Chevrolet Chevelle SS. Through my entire life, I've always taken care of that car. I loved that car to death. 90% of that car still consisting of its original parts. Seeing as I'm a mechanic, I had no issues doing everything myself. This car was standing in front of my shop most of the time or in my garage at home. My son loved this car as well. He always wanted to go along for rides and he knew everything about it. He even had a small model car that looked just like it. So, where did it go wrong, you wonder? My ex-wife remarried as well 8 years ago, but they moved a few states away seeing her new husband got a new and better paid job offer. After that, I spoke to my son mostly on the telephone and saw him maybe once every 3-4 months for a long weekend or half a week. The phone calls became less frequent and he said he wanted to focus on his schoolwork. Seeing he was a teen and I couldn't blame him for that. My stepson was already 10 at that time. When my son was 16, he went to university a few states away. I barely had time to speak to him or to see him. My business was doing badly at the time and my wife had also gotten really sick at the time with E. coli and had kidney failure. It was a tough time keeping everything together, but somehow we made it through all of it and my wife is doing far better now. Fast forward to April 2019. My stepson turned 16 that month. My stepson always got on with my son, so he invited him. My son was busy at the time, but promised he would show up a few days later. After all that happened, I didn't see him for almost 4 years, so I was glad he was coming over. Now here comes the part where I fucked up badly. My stepson was a great student. Even when times were tough, he managed to get good grades at school and even got into the university, where he wanted to study medicine. My wife and I were so proud of him, so I decided to give him my old Chevrolet Chevelle for his 16th birthday. He was pretty amazed by it and so were his friends. It's a car that to this day still makes an impact. It is so on my son as well, one that would cost my relationship with him. I texted him a picture of my stepson with the car on his 16th birthday party, not knowing what would happen next. My son texted me back with, "Is this a joke?" I didn't understand at the time and texted him back with, "No, why?" He called me not a few seconds later, yelling at me to tell him that it was a joke. He told me that I promised him the car when he was 10 years old, that if he did well in school I would give it to him. The part that made me yell back at him through the phone was when he called me a lousy father that didn't care about his real son. Let me tell you, things were said from both sides that weren't nice from that point onwards. My wife told me to calm down and to talk it out, because there was some misunderstanding. I then did the most regrettable thing I've done, and if I could take it back I would do it. I told my son in a fit of rage that he didn't deserve the car and that he could call me back if he changed his attitude. After I hung up the phone, I got into a fight with my wife, who stood up for my son. At that moment in time I didn't care. I was insulted for being called a bad father. I tried to contact my son a few days afterwards, but I wouldn't get any response. I think he changed his phone number a day after the fight. I couldn't care any less at the time. 3 weeks later my ex-wife called, furious as hell. My son had apparently graduated from university, and I was in hindsight not invited by my son. My ex-wife already found it strange that I wasn't there. My son told her there, and then what happened, and that he wanted to invite me on the day he would come to visit for his graduation. The worst thing is, he was graduating as an automotive service technician and was apparently one of the best in his class. I then realized that I was indeed a bad father. In those 4 years of not seeing him and all the stress around me, I didn't even bother to ask what he was studying. My ex-wife told me that he was heartbroken and felt like he was unwanted, unlike my stepson. She started crying on the phone, saying he just wanted to be a mechanic just like you. He apparently wanted to move back and work with me in my shop and take over when I was going to retire. My entire world crumbled up in front of me. I felt and still feel so incredibly stupid for saying those things to him. My ex-wife wouldn't give me his new number and address, seeing he wanted no contact with me ever again. She also told me to never reach out to her ever again. It's been more than a year now. I've had a few fights about it with my wife. My stepson gave the car back and settled for something else, if it meant that my son would come back. I've tried getting into contact with him for the last 11 months. Until a few months ago, the last thing I found out was that he was probably working for some big car manufacturer, but they didn't want to give out any information about the people working there. Yesterday I got a package from him unexpectedly. It didn't come with a letter or return address on it, but I knew it was from him. It was a box with his old Chevrolet toy car, an old picture ripped up of him and me on the hood of the car, and a videotape. I watched the videotape. He was probably 7 years old at the time. In the video I was fixing a car. I cried halfway through this, because I then knew why he mailed me the tape. I said to him while he was filming it, if he wanted and kept up his grades, that the shop could be his one day, including my Chevy. TLDR, I didn't keep my promise to my son and gave away my sports car to my stepson. Things were said and now I will never see him again. Edit. A part I left out. Edit 1. Some of you didn't clearly read everything, and that's okay. I would be mad while reading this. My stepson is not to blame here. He gave back the car and the car is now stored in a garage box. This car has become a thorn in my eye and I can't look at it. TBH. Edit 2. My family and I tried to search for him on Facebook and all the other popular social media apps. Seeing how he never was into any of those, we couldn't find anything. Edit 3. I've been searching for him for quite some time already. If this virus clears out, I can travel to some states to see if he actually lives or works there. Edit 4. After actually contacting my ex-wife a few times over the course of months, she told me half a year ago that she would ask him once to contact me. But she couldn't force him to if he didn't want to. Edit 5. Some of you have reached out to me. I'm grateful for the help from some of you to try to help me track him down. But as you can understand, I can't give out personal information about myself or my family and my son. There is already too much at stake. Edit 6. Deleting this account. I know a lot of you people are angry. Believe me, I know the feeling. I hate myself as well. I came here to share a story of how I fucked up badly, hoping some people maybe would learn of it. But the nasty messages and death threats I'm receiving in my inbox from other car enthusiasts and other upset people are really not worth it. From one worthless father to any father or future one, please learn from my mistake.